Before we dive into today's story, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. The dining chair scraped sharply across the marble floor, and before anyone could react, little Amara Wells slipped and fell. The sound was wrong, not loud, not dramatic, just a soft thud that stole the air from the room. For one terrible second, the long table filled with silverware, history, and forced smiles went completely silent. Elena Wells stood frozen, her eyes locked on her daughter's small body on the floor. Victor Hale, her father, still had his hand raised, fingers stiff in the air as if time itself had forgotten to pull him back. Amara was 9 years old, too light, too quiet. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just lay there, stunned, breath knocked out of her chest. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," but it sounded far away. Victor finally spoke, his voice steady, practiced. "That seat was never meant for her," he said calmly, as if stating a rule written centuries ago. "That place is for my real grandchild." Elena felt something settle inside her, cold and exact. She didn't rush forward. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She looked directly at her father and said very clearly, "Pack your things. Now." Her mother, Marian Hale, dropped her wine glass. It shattered, red liquid spilling across the white tablecloth like a warning no one chose to understand in time. Victor turned pale, not with guilt, but with confusion. He laughed once, short and sharp. "Elena, don't be dramatic," he said, waving his hand. "This is my house." Elena nodded slowly, as if agreeing with a child who didn't yet know better. "It was," she replied. "Not anymore." Her brother Thomas Hale stared down at his plate, tracing a crack in the porcelain like it might open and swallow him. Marian whispered, "Elena, please, you're upsetting everyone," but her voice shook. Victor straightened his jacket. Authority had always obeyed him. "You're overreacting," he said. "She fell. That's all." Elena finally walked to Amara, lifting her gently, holding her close. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly. Amara shook her head. "I think I lost my breath," she whispered. Elena kissed her hair, then looked back at her father. "You didn't see a child," Elena said. "You saw a problem." Victor scoffed. "She is a problem," he replied without hesitation. "A temporary one." The word landed harder than the fall. Marian gasped. Thomas finally looked up. "Dad, stop," he muttered. Victor ignored him. "I won't be disrespected in my own home," Victor said. Elena reached into her pocket, calm as still water. "You won't be disrespected," she said. "You'll just be leaving." Elena had not always been this woman. Once she had worshipped Victor Hale. To her, he had been gravity, strong, unquestioned, immovable. As a child, she learned quickly how to earn his approval. Straight A's, he would say. No excuses. She obeyed. "Don't talk back," he'd warn. She didn't. She married Daniel Wells because Victor liked him, liked the way he shook hands firmly and kept his opinions quiet. When the marriage broke, Victor called it a failure of discipline. "You gave up too easily," he told her. Elena stayed silent. When she adopted Amara 3 years later, Victor smiled thinly. "That's generous of you," he said, like she'd donated furniture. Later, when he thought she couldn't hear, he told Marian, "She's not really Elena's. It's just charity." Elena pretended not to hear. She pretended a lot back then, but pretending had a cost. Victor stopped using Amara's name. "The girl," he would say. He moved her chair further away during holidays. "Children should be seen, not centered," he'd remark. When Elena defended her, Victor corrected her instead. "You're too emotional," he'd say. Elena listened. She remembered. She stayed quiet, not because she was weak, but because she was learning. The proof came quietly like it always does. An email forwarded by mistake. Subject line, estate clarification. Marian had sent it to her sister. Forgetting Elena was included. Victor had rewritten his will. Bloodline only. No exceptions. In his own words, he called Amara a temporary arrangement. Elena didn't cry. She didn't confront him. That would have been kindness. Instead, she planned. She met Rachel Monroe, a lawyer who specialized in family trusts. Then Caleb Wright, who handled elder assets. She asked questions calmly. Which accounts need dual signatures? What language triggers review? What qualifies as discriminatory intent? She recorded conversations, not traps, confirmations. Victor was careless when he felt untouchable. Why should my money go to someone who doesn't carry my name? He said once, laughing. Elena let the silence answer him. She contacted the foundation board Victor chaired, acting like a loyal daughter. I just want transparency, she said sweetly. They listened. Christmas wasn't revenge, it was timing. When Victor pushed Amara, he didn't just lose control. He revealed it. Back in the dining room, Victor folded his arms. You think you can scare me? He asked Elena. She pressed a button on her phone. His own voice filled the room, calm and cruel, talking about cutting her off, about protecting the bloodline, about how love was wasted on children without his name. Marian sank into her chair. Thomas whispered, Dad, but Victor had no words left. The front door opened. Harold Bennett, chair of the foundation board, stepped in. Behind him, the trustee. Then Elena's attorney. Harold cleared his throat. Victor Hale, he said, the board has voted. Effective immediately. Victor looked around like a man searching for air. This is absurd, he said. Elena spoke gently. Get your things, she said again. For her. Victor reached for Marian. She stepped back. Amara looked up at Elena. Mom, she asked quietly. Elena knelt. You didn't do anything wrong, she said. You showed him who he was. Amara nodded, like that made perfect sense. Some people think power disappears. Elena knew better. It only moves to those who know how to hold it. The door closed behind Victor Hale with a sound that felt final, not loud but complete, like the last page of a book being shut. The house stood still, as if it had been holding its breath for years and had finally decided to exhale. Elena stayed where she was, sitting on the floor with Amara in her arms. She felt the child's heartbeat slowly return to normal, small fingers gripping the fabric of her sweater. Is he gone? Amara asked softly. Elena nodded. Yes, sweetheart. He's gone. Marian stood near the table, trembling. I didn't think he'd ever, she began, then stopped. Elena looked up at her mother. You didn't think he'd do it out loud, she said calmly, but he always thought it. Thomas finally pushed his chair back. You planned this, he said, not accusing, just realizing. Elena met his eyes. I prepared, she replied. There's a difference. Thomas swallowed. What happens now? Elena glanced around the room. The portraits, the silverware, the symbols of a family that had mistaken power for love. Now, she said, we choose who we are without him. Amara rested her head on Elena's shoulder. Can we go home? She asked. Elena smiled. We already are. The following weeks unfolded quietly, the way real change always does. Victor tried to fight back at first, emails, calls, threats masked as legal concern. You're destroying the family, he left in one message. Elena listened once, then deleted it. The trust review moved forward. The foundation issued a public statement about values and accountability. Victor's name disappeared from letterheads, plaques, and memory faster than he ever imagined. Marian moved into a smaller apartment nearby. One afternoon, she sat across from Elena at the kitchen table and whispered, I should have protected you. Elena poured her tea and replied gently, You still can. Start with her. Marian looked at Amara, who was coloring at the counter. Can I? She asked hesitantly. Elena nodded. If you mean it. Thomas called later that night. He blames you, he said. Elena smiled sadly. He always needed someone to. Then Thomas added, "But I don't." Silence followed, heavy but honest. For the first time, Elena didn't feel the need to fill it. One evening, Elena found Amara sitting on the floor, lining up her toy figures. "This one fell," Amara said, tipping one over gently. But she got back up. Elena sat beside her. "Does she need help?" Amara nodded. "Everyone does sometimes." Elena felt her throat tighten. "Did Grandpa hate me?" Amara asked suddenly. Elena took a breath. "No," she said carefully. "He was afraid of what he couldn't control." Amara considered this. "I'm not scary," she said. Elena smiled. "No, you're brave." Amara beamed. "Then I'm glad I fell," she said. Elena froze. "Why?" "Because you stood up," Amara replied simply. Elena hugged her close, realizing that children understood justice in ways adults often forgot. Not as punishment, but as protection. Months later, Elena walked through the foundation building, now officially listed as executive director. A staff member smiled and said, "We're glad you're here." Elena nodded. "So am I." She rewrote policies, not loudly but carefully. Inclusion wasn't a statement, it was structure. At home, laughter replaced tension. The dining table felt lighter, wider. On the anniversary of that night, Amara asked, "Do you think he's lonely?" Elena thought for a moment. "I think he's learning," she said. "Some lessons take longer." Amara nodded, satisfied. "I like our house," she said. "It doesn't feel heavy." Elena looked around. "Neither do I." Elena never called it revenge. Revenge was emotional, messy, loud. What she did was precise. She removed the hand that thought it could push a child to the floor and still rule the room. Victor had taught her how power worked, how silence could dominate, how fear could shape a family. Elena simply learned how to take that power apart piece by piece. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't harden her heart. She chose clarity over cruelty. One night, as she tucked Amara into bed, the girl whispered, "Mom." "Yes." Elena answered, "Thank you for choosing me." Elena kissed her forehead. "I always will." Outside, the house stood quiet, not in fear but in peace. And for the first time in her life, Elena knew exactly where she stood. Not beneath anyone, not waiting for approval, but firmly, finally in her place. Time did what it always does. It told the truth slowly. A year passed, then another. Elena no longer woke with the old tightness in her chest, the feeling that she needed permission to exist. One afternoon, as she and Amara baked bread together, flour dusting the counter and their noses, Amara asked, "Do you think people can change when they lose everything?" Elena paused, kneading the dough. "Some do," she said. "Some only learn what they were holding." Amara nodded thoughtfully. "I think losing the throne helps," she said. Elena laughed softly. "That's very wise." Later that evening, Thomas stopped by. He looked lighter, less careful. "Dad's moving again," he said quietly. Elena didn't ask where. "He keeps telling people he built all this," Thomas added. Elena smiled faintly. "He did," she said. "He just forgot who he built it on." Thomas hesitated. "I used to think strength meant control," he admitted. Elena looked at Amara laughing in the next room. "Strength," she said, "is knowing who you refuse to harm." On Amara's 10th birthday, the dining table was filled again, but this time with noise, laughter, and warmth that didn't feel rehearsed. Marian brought a cake, hand steady now. "Chocolate," she said. "Her favorite." Amara hugged her. "Thank you, Grandma." The words still felt new, but it fit. As candles were lit, Amara closed her eyes. Elena watched her daughter's face, free of fear, free of doubt. "What did you wish for?" Elena asked later. Amara smiled. "Nothing," she said. "I already have what I need." Elena felt the weight of that settle gently in her chest. That night, after guests left and dishes were stacked, Elena stood alone in the doorway where everything had changed. She didn't feel anger anymore. She felt distance, and that was freedom. Power hadn't returned to Victor. It hadn't disappeared. It had been redistributed, carefully, intentionally, into safer hands. Years later, when Amara was old enough to understand the story fully, she asked, "Were you scared that night?" Elena considered the question. "Yes," she said honestly, "but not of him." "Of what, then?" Amara asked. Elena smiled. "Of staying quiet." Amara thought about that, then said, "I'm glad you didn't." Elena reached for her hand. "So am I." Some people leave scars. Others leave lessons. Victor had done both. But Elena chose which one would shape the future. She didn't inherit her father's power. She outgrew it. And in doing so, she built something stronger than control, louder than fear, and far more permanent than any throne. A home where no child ever had to fall to prove they belonged. Years later, the story returned in small, ordinary ways. Elena heard it when Amara corrected a teacher gently instead of shrinking. She saw it when Amara stood between a younger child and a group that laughed too loudly. One evening, as they washed dishes together, Amara said, "Do you think people are born knowing how to be kind?" Elena shook her head. "No," she said. "I think kindness is learned when someone chooses you first." Amara smiled. "Then you taught me." Elena felt the weight of that sentence more than anything Victor had ever said. That night, Thomas called. "He's sick," he said quietly. Elena didn't ask who. "He wants to talk to you." Elena looked at Amara, asleep on the couch, a book open on her chest. "I don't need to," she said. "I already said everything that mattered." Thomas exhaled. "I think I understand now," he said. Elena replied gently, "Understanding isn't about agreement. It's about honesty." When the call ended, Elena didn't feel relief or regret. She felt complete. Some doors are closed not to punish what's behind them, but to protect what's ahead. On a quiet morning years later, Elena watched Amara leave for school, backpack too big, confidence perfectly sized. Amara paused at the door. "Mom." "Yes." Elena answered. "If someone ever tells me I don't belong," Amara said, "what should I do?" Elena smiled, not sadly, not proudly, just sure. "You don't argue," she said. "You build a life so full they can't reach it." Amara nodded, satisfied, and ran down the steps. Elena stood there for a moment, sunlight warming the doorway that had once held so much fear. Power hadn't followed Victor when he left. It stayed where it was finally earned, where protection mattered more than pride, and love carried more authority than blood. Elena closed the door softly behind her, not shutting anyone out, but sealing something safe inside. The story didn't end with punishment. It ended with clarity, and that, Elena knew, was the strongest ending of all. Life did not become perfect after that. It became honest. Elena learned that honesty carried its own quiet challenges. There were meetings where people tested her softness, mistaking it for weakness. "You don't sound like Victor," one donor remarked once, smiling thinly. Elena returned the smile. "That's intentional," she said. At home, Amara struggled some nights with questions that had no clean answers. "Why didn't he like me?" she asked once, voice small in the dark. Elena sat on the edge of the bed and answered slowly. "Because liking you would have required him to change." Amara thought about that. "Then I'm glad I didn't," she said. Elena laughed softly and kissed her forehead. The world did not bend to them, but it made room. And that, Elena knew, was enough. Years passed. Amara grew taller, louder, surer. One afternoon, Elena attended a school assembly where Amara stood on stage, reading a short speech. "Family," Amara said clearly, "is the place you don't have to earn your chair." Elena felt tears rise, uninvited and unstoppable. Afterward, a teacher leaned over and whispered, "She's very confident." Elena nodded. She was taught to be safe. That evening, Amara asked, "Do you think he remembers me?" Elena considered the question carefully. "I think he remembers the moment he lost control," she said. And sometimes that's how people remember love. Too late. Amara shrugged. I'm okay, she said. Elena believed her. On the anniversary of the night, everything changed. Elena set the table differently. No assigned seats. No hierarchy. Just space. She watched Amara move freely, laughing, choosing where to sit. Elena realized then that legacy was not something you guarded. It was something you released. Victor had believed power meant being obeyed. Elena had learned it meant being trusted. As the evening ended and the house settled into its familiar peace, Amara leaned against her and said, I like who we are. Elena wrapped an arm around her. So do I, she replied. Outside, the world moved on, indifferent and vast. Inside, something held steady. And that was how the story truly ended. Not with exile or triumph, but with a home that no longer needed permission to exist. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comment section.